live here. Our very first episode of the Husky Huddle. I have my fantastic co-host here, and he calls himself the greatest podcaster in the world. So there's nobody better to have on as the co-host than the greatest.
It's universe, Dave. Universe.
I got the universe. Wait. The world is way too limiting, Steve. Steve Cully on, obviously former Uconn offensive lineman star under the good eras of Uconn, mind you, multiple bowl game era. So.
I don't know if I was a star, but I tell people I was good at getting in the way.
That's a good key as the offensive lineman. If you can get in the way of people,
I got in the way.
Pushing becomes secondary, right? That becomes no doubt.
I could get in the way.
We're gonna really try to take this podcast in a direction where we can give Uconn its due as some coverage and from a football standpoint, and that's our goal with it. And this is obviously the very first episode. We'll have guests on throughout out the way. Until then, you have me, former Uconn football player, and Steve, former Uconn football player, to discuss everything Uconn and really try to see how the season has gone and goes. And as we get into the preseason, really kind of keep you up to date as to what's going on with the team. And we'll have guests on periodically to really talk Uconn football.
And I think, like you said, we looked at the Uconn Twitter page and some of the different things that they're doing, and they're not getting the mainstream coverage that other teams do. And they may not have the public relations, the marketing department, the social media department, the recruiting department. So I think that's an area at least we can contribute and help and enhance for them.
Yep, and we're going to cover it with no holds barred and really kind of start to really. We're going to take this today and really preseason breakdown a little bit of what's going on, like kind of the state of Uconn football, and then as we start to get our guests on from week to week, we'll talk with them to get their insight on everything. But Uconn's had a very, I would say, rocky history, and then going back to when I played, when you played, and then post that, when you played was really when Uconn was really on the rise under Edsall term first stint, not second stint, first stint, round one. And you guys had some great teams.
We definitely made the transition, which wasn't easy, and we took it on the chin for several years, but we turned it around. And I think that's what matters most. Is by 2002, we were 6-6. 2003, we were 9-3 and should have gone to a bowl game had there been 65 bowl games back then. And then 2004, I wasn't a part of that. That was the Motor City Bowl. That was the first ever bowl game Uconn participated in. And then from there, they had success across the board. 2005, 2006, 2007. I believe they won a share of the Big East Championship in 2007. And then, they went to the Papa John's Bowl. They beat South Carolina. They lost to Wake Forest in the bowl that's in Charlotte. And then, obviously, they went to the International Bowl in 2009.
Was that the Belk Bowl they used to call it back then? Was that the Belk?
No, it was the International Bowl. It was in Rogers Stadium in Toronto.
Oh, what about the one that was in Charlotte? Was that the Belk Bowl? That was
no. I can't. I'll look it up. It was like the CarQuest Bowl. It was something. It had some weird name, but we went to that. The International Bowl was 2009, and that was they had a great year then. That was Tyler Lorenzen was the quarterback.
Right.
And they did phenomenal.
And that was still Randy, right?
That was still Randy, yeah.
Okay.
And then 2010 obviously was the pinnacle. They win the Big East. I mean, they went 8-4, and they got a chance to go to the Fiesta Bowl, where they obviously were. I mean, they were kind of throttled by Arizona, but
Right.
otherwise, I mean that was the pinnacle, and I had. It was the Meineke Car Care Bowl. That was the bowl in Charlotte. So you were closer than I. I said Car Quest. You said something else. But it was car involved.
It was Carnival. Okay, there you go.
But yeah, with 2010, they go to the Fiesta Bowl, and I had Coach Edsall on the podcast, and he was very candid about why he left, and it made sense. He just didn't come out with it as much at the time, but the standards at UConn academically had risen. It was tougher to get kids in, and he didn't feel that they were going to be able to sustain winning consistently at the level they had been. Because you have to remember, 2000 through 2003, they didn't go to a bowl game. 2004, 2005, and I think 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, they all went to bowl games. And, people started to kind of get restless, saying that, we can play an easy non-conference schedule each year and get 3 or 4 wins. And then all we need is 3 Big East wins, and we're going to go to a bowl game, and everyone in Connecticut, and everyone's going to rejoice. And eventually the fan base wanted more. They got it in 2010. But UConn, as you know, being a public university, they don't have the funding to hand out the $8 to $10 million contracts to all the coaches. So I think Randy saw an opportunity to maximize his value.
Right.
And I don't know that Maryland is necessarily anyone's dream job for coaching, but he felt that it was for him, and he goes to Maryland, and they bring in Paul Pasqualoni, who had been at Syracuse, and I think he had been in the NFL previously.
Right.
And that's
a legend at Syracuse. A legend at Syracuse.
I loved him. Loved him.
Donovan McNabb. I think there was
Marvin Harrison, Donovan McNabb, to Bucky Jones.
There was a push there too for him from the inside to get the job. I always thought that bringing him
and he admitted to that too.
That there was a push for that.
He admitted that. He admitted to me that he was very close to taking that job, I believe, in 2006.
Okay.
When they hired Greg Robinson, Randy was close to. He admitted that he flirted with it and was close to taking the job, but he never did. Robinson.
But there was a push from the inside for Pasqualoni to really come on board.
There was, yes. I'm sorry, yes.
UConn insiders, yeah.
Absolutely, yes, because he had a great relationship with the Connecticut.
Right, with the Connecticut, because he was a Western Connecticut guy as a coach. It was a whole kind of thing, and I remember because I was really just merging as a head coach at that time. Because what was that, 2011?
Yes.
So teams I had built this program up, and we were just starting to transitioning to becoming a powerhouse. And we had went up there did we play 7-on-7 up there?
You went up to Connecticut?
Yeah, I think we might have went and played
Oh,
7-on-7 up there, maybe even. I think we did.
at
Um,
UConn or at a high school
at
in
Uconn,
Connecticut?
I think Uconn had a
Oh,
7-on-7 tournament. I think we
they
played.
did. Yes.
Yeah, I think we play. It's amazing how your memory starts to go on some of these things. But yeah, we played up there, and then we. But I was slightly like I met Pasqualeone. Like I was slightly disappointed in the fact that I said, hey, I played here, blah blah blah. You know, obviously I brought my team up there, and he was almost like standoffish. So it was like, yeah, and I knew most of the coaches. I knew a lot of the assistants on stuff.
George De Leon and yeah, a
Yeah, I
lot
knew
of
George
guys.
really well,
Oh, you did.
really well. Yeah. So
Rest in
George,
rest in peace.
yes, great guy. So that's what I was saying. Like I knew George really well because that's part of what I came up with. But that was when I was like, because George was at Syracuse with Pasqualeone at the very
Yes.
at
Yes.
and they had a great they came up together. George Leone recruited me out of high school. So when he was at
Okay.
Syracuse. So
Okay.
they recruited me pretty heavily, but then I went up there it was different times, like official. You really didn't go on many unofficial
No.
visits, but I went on an unofficial visit up that Syracuse recruited me pretty heavily in the spring. In the fall of my senior year. So I went up there on unofficial. This is when you used to get offers, by the way, senior year. And
I know, right?
I got all mine senior year. So I went up there, and then I realized that I was really the next. There was another guy I think that was ahead of me that they were looking
Yeah,
at.
I think you mentioned his name as
Yeah, I
well.
can't remember it now, but yeah, they. So anyway,
I
yeah, so I had a
Coach.
great relationship with Coach DeLeon, and going way back. When he was at Temple, he offered a player of mine that I coached at when I was at my head coach at my first job, and the kid went and played for them. So I kind of had that relationship. So I was a little surprised, and I thought, you know what, maybe he's a little bit older now. Maybe this is not, what I'm saying, the younger. Uh,
Well, everyone told me he wasn't a people person.
well, he
George
definitely,
DeLeon.
though DeLeon was great. I love
He
DeLeon.
really was?
Yeah, I thought he was great. He was
Okay.
great with me. Now I don't know how he was other. I'm talking about Pasqualeone.
Oh,
Pasqualeone, I thought was
Pasqualoni. Okay.
yeah, I thought
Yeah,
he was
Pasqualoni.
older. I felt like he was older at that point.
He was.
Yeah,
He was
and that
he was grumpy.
it was grumpy, right? And so then the move after that, that really started kind of the beginnings of the
That was the downfall.
right. And then they went to Diako, who could have been, I think, great. Given
Come on.
Could have been great given if he was committed to UConn, but he really wasn't. Like it seemed like it
You
was.
thought it was a stepping stone deal
Yeah, it
for
was
him.
really. I thought it was a stepping stone, and there was a lot of antics to it, which I don't think fit UConn well. If am I wrong on that, or
The civil conflict bowl. Yes. The civil he called it the civil conflict rivalry because he was trying to build rivalries within the new conference.
right,
That's when they left the Big East and went to the AAC, or the Big East folded and they officially
right,
went to the AAC. So he had this trophy created, and without like talking to anyone from the other school, he decides we're going to have a rivalry with UCF, and it's going to be called the civil conflict. And I read, it was funny because in the fall, The Athletic was doing stories on like certain myths and questions of college football. And one of those myths and questions is, where is the civil conflict trophy located right now? Who has it? Everyone wants to know who has it, because I think UConn won it the first year. The
okay.
second or third year, UCF won it and didn't want it, and like left it on the field. So there was always a big mystery as to where it ended up.
Wow.
And that's what The Athletic wrote a story about it, and it was hilarious to hear it. And they interviewed Diako, who obviously didn't want to talk about it. And all he would say was, I was just trying to create a rivalry. I was just trying to get the fans excited, you know. And I totally agree with that. You're going into a conference that has never existed. They put the American together,
right,
with a plethora of teams that nobody wanted. Right. I mean, it was teams from all over, you know. Right.
It was Houston, right, and Louisville,
yes,
and
yes.
Although amazingly, some of those
it was teams, Houston and Memphis, and it was
they all capitalized though. Some of those capitalized on
they
it.
did,
Memphis, Houston, Louisville, they kind of capitalized on that.
Houston got into the Big 12.
It was bad for us though. It was bad for us.
It was bad for us. I don't know that we should have left, but
right. Well, yeah. Well, if you ask basketball, no.
The basketball, I 100% basketball is going to take precedent. I understand that. But everyone, and you and I have talked about this, the money is in football.
Yes.
When you're winning, we talked about this. You won 2 national championships, and you are in the red for the athletic department.
Is that true? So you know
that
this
is
better
true
than me.
Yeah.
So
and that's what drives me nuts.
They've won 2 national championships in the basketball in a row with arguably the best coach in the whole entire country. I would say yes, he is in college basketball.
Yes,
and maybe if you combine the NBA, he might be the best coach. Period across college and pros. And we're in the red. That's interesting.
We're in the red. Yes, and that's
football.
And that angers me. And that's what I had talked to when I had Coach Baylock on. I asked him, I go, what's the answer? I said, it's either you stay in the Big East for basketball, and if a conference will take you for football and all other sports, you join. It's either that, or you leave the Big East for basketball and join the ACC for everything. And the diehards do not want to leave the Big East for basketball. And that's why we're in the state that we're in. And that's why we're having to go last year, and play Tennessee, play Michigan, play all these big schools, because you get the $2 million to go there and get your ass kicked.
Right.
And that's what funds the program, because there's no TV deal. They're an independent. So they have to scratch and claw for everything they get. And now this is the first year, the Uconn Foundation is putting together an NIL program to try to raise money and get some players. And actually today is the golf tournament.
Today is the golf tournament.
Yeah. It was funny because I did the podcast before this with Laban Marsh, and Laban and I were talking about how neither, Tommy Collins was the one who sent me a picture of the notice of the golf tournament being today. And Laban and I were like, why didn't they invite us? Like, we don't have enough money. They didn't want to. It's only for the high rollers. I mean,
wait a minute. I didn't even know about it.
I didn't either. Isn't it ridiculous? I'm gonna try to pull it up on my phone and show it to you. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, the golf tournament's today, but it's mostly basketball stars that are participating in it. But
so this is not the Uconn football one. This is just Uconn alumni, I guess.
Here, let's see if you can see it. Oh, hold on. No, it's called the. Okay, here it is.
I see it.
Uconn Legends Tournament.
God.
Greenwich Country Club.
Donnie Marshall. Oh, that's from when I was in school.
Ray Allen, Scott Burnell, Jim Calhoun, Rudy Gay, Danielle Marshall, Tom Moore, and Emeka Okafor to support Bleeding Blue for Good. I didn't get an invite. Apparently neither did you.
I don't get invited to anything. So
yeah, you don't get invited to anything anymore. You have to
have
have
a certain amount of time. You get no invites to anything. That's what happens, I guess, when you don't respond to their constant.
Well, I mean, unless you're throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars around every year, then they're not going to bother to waste the 25-cent stamp to send you a letter or take the 10 seconds to write an email and inform you of it. But no, it's good that they're doing it. They're going to raise money, and that is the start, I believe, to how we get back to having football being a premier sport, because the money coming in, being able to provide NIL deals, gets you better players,
right?
Gets you more wins, and then hopefully we'll get you into a conference. Because I don't think the model they have right now, I don't know that it's sustainable for the next 10 years.
Right. Like, do you think that they had the transfer quarterback that's competing for the job from Wisconsin? Did they have to give him NIL to come there? Even though he was
I believe so. Yes,
yeah.
I believe so. Yes.
The backup they had. And I mean, my guess is.
But that's what I would do though. Like if I were UConn, I would go to Alabama's depth chart.
Right.
And I'd see who the fourth string quarterback was. And I'd say, hey, you want to come to UConn? We'll give you this.
Right.
We can't give you a lot. We'll give you something.
Well, they got to go into the portal. Otherwise, I mean,
exactly.
The question is like the tampering that goes on. Like, obviously, UConn lost and we struggled last year. The year before, we actually played well. Did we make a bowl? I think we might.
We did. We went 6-6 and made a bowl game. Absolutely. That was Moore's first year.
So we made a bowl game.
And then they went 3-9.
They had some great staff that first year. One of them, the guy who recruited like the New Jersey area, he went to Nebraska. Left Moore's staff, went to Nebraska.
I saw that.
He used to work for me and run my camps for many years. Yep. That's how he actually got started. And then he had a training business, and then he went to Rutgers, and then he kind of went the whole path. But yeah, so he went to Nebraska because he was like really a Matt Rule guy. And then
you told me about him. Yes.
Yep.
I remember you telling me about him.
Yep. So but then they have replaced some of those guys. They have some decent names and staff, but from a recruiting standpoint, I think they have to go for it more. Like, I think we have to continue to like go for it and build all the relationships that have to be done to get all the guys we need. And now I do think we're probably in a situation where we have to go after guys that are missing something. You know what I mean? Like
that's who you're going to be able to get realistically.
Right.
Realistically, that's who you're going to be able to get. In my opinion, you're going to have to go after fringe Division I FCS players that you can that will stay for 4 years and you can develop and hopefully get something out of them for 2 years, or you're going to have to go for it and see if you can get lucky on someone. But otherwise, the model of being an independent and not having the revenue coming in, not being able to get those players.
Right.
10 years, like how's the program going to survive 10 more years?
Like, I thought in round one with Edsall that he kind of did some of that in recruiting, like got the guys that were maybe missing something, developed.
He was excellent at developing players.
Yep.
Excellent.
Round two.
Well, round two didn't last very long, but
round two, and it wasn't really a good move in retrospect. And I don't know. I don't even know. You had him on. I don't know if he would admit to it, but he maybe it became a thing where he quickly realized that maybe UConn wasn't committed.
He did.
What
He felt
doing what-
betrayed. Yes.
Yep. He felt betrayed. He went there, felt betrayed, and then I think that then coupled with the fact that he now, because he felt that way, probably wasn't putting everything he could into it in the recruiting area. See, the recruiting to me,
they didn't play in 2020.
They didn't play.
They didn't play in COVID.
Biggest mistake.
Biggest mistake.
That was like giving your. I said this to, I don't know. You know Robert Alfaro? I don't know. I'm good friends. So
Love Bobby.
I said to Robert. I said we are one of the only schools in the country that gave ourselves the death penalty. We gave ourselves.
We did. That's a great way to put it.
That's why I said we literally gave ourselves the death penalty. Like SMU, the NCAA gave them the death penalty, set them back 20 years, maybe forever. You know what I mean? I mean, SMU is now slowly climbing out of the gutter. Okay?
We did. We gave ourselves a death penalty.
We actually voluntarily gave ourselves the death penalty. You know,
I'm going to steal that from you and use it. I'm just going to let you know that now. That's a great line. That's true. That's 100% true. They practiced all fall. They had some double sessions or whatnot, but they go into the 2021 season, home opener, they lose to Holy Cross.
Right.
And that's where I used to coach. And that year, Holy Cross was great. They made it to the finals. No, I wasn't.
Okay.
But I knew they were great. And that year, they made it to the semifinals of the playoffs. But after that loss, first they announced Edsall was going to retire at the end of the year.
Right.
And then I think like a day later, it was announced Edsall's terminated. And that was the end of him. But he felt betrayed by Benedict, and he didn't get the support that he was promised. He didn't get the money to bring in the staff that he needed, and all those played factors into it.
Is Mora getting that now? Do you know? I mean,
allegedly he's getting a larger budget, but now, as you know, I'm still blown away by it. These college football staffs have 30 people on them.
Yep.
I mean, they have a recruiting department. They have the PR and marketing. They have the coaches. They have the GAs. They have the analysts. I mean, there's 30 people in a room, and I don't think UConn ever got to that level. I know they have a good staff. I'll take a look at it.
I saw they announced that like this year they had a GM for the first time. They have a GM now.
They do. Okay.
Yeah, they do have a
personnel.
GM. The beginnings of, I think they have couple player personnel guys. I think it's the beginnings of that. But the big question is like, how do you I don't know, without a conference, like I think that when we were in the Big East, okay, and that was maybe as much as the coaching picks that we had along the way in the 2010s. You could also argue that losing the Big East was a big deal because now
I think I agree with you, and I think losing the Big East hurt everyone. And the reason I say that is because Syracuse, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Miami, BC, Temple, Rutgers, they all leave for the money, for greener pastures. Well, the grass isn't always greener.
Right.
If you look at every team in the Big East that has left, since they have left, none of them has won a conference championship. I don't think any of them have played in BCS bowl games. The only one was 2007 BC with Matt Ryan. Other than that, all the Big East teams that left, for the different conferences have struggled. West Virginia in the Big 12.
Right.
Does that make sense? I mean, the Big East now is really the ACC. Syracuse, BC, Tech, Miami. Rutgers is in the Big Ten, and that's what drives me nuts. Rutgers can go 5-7 every year. No offense, I know you're a Jersey guy, but they get $40 million because of the TV deal.
Yep.
And that sustains. It's the trickle down effect that sustains all the other sports.
And it's helped. Yes, 100%. It's helped now. It's helped their recruiting. If you looked up Rutgers recruiting, they're like top 10 in the country.
Yeah, Schiano's doing a great job.
He's doing a great job. Now, the first few years were very difficult, but because they're getting that money, they could keep increasing their budgets. And then he has a chance because he is a very good recruiter, and
yes,
he has a chance to go and get some of these, which he's starting to do now. He's starting to get some of these guys. I think the same thing would happen to Uconn if we were in an ACC. Because look, you got at Syracuse. Now you have Fran Brown at Syracuse, who's a fantastic recruiter.
Yes,
and a coach, and he came from Georgia.
Did
And
you know of him?
Yeah, he's from New Jersey.
Because that's what everyone said, that he's an incredible recruiter, and he got some of the top players in Jersey to commit to Syracuse this past year. He did, yeah.
Yep.
Did he coach in Jersey?
He's from the Philly Camden area.
Oh, okay.
The Jersey side, I think more in that Camden area. So the issue, yeah, and listen, in New Jersey football is critical to the Northeast football schools.
Huge.
Outside of Penn State, because Penn State, they still recruit Jersey, obviously, but they can get a lot of what they need in that Penn State because they border the Midwest, right?
Yeah, so Ohio, and yeah. Absolutely.
They're in a great spot. They obviously have great tradition because of Paterno, but they in a great spot, and Franklin's done a great job. But New Jersey is critical. So Schiano's starting to get guys. Fran Brown is starting to get guys, and the groups that have suffered a little bit are Uconn and BC, right?
Well, that's what's bothered me is because they have a resource in you who knows the landscape, who's been there for many years,
right?
Knows the coaches, knows the players, and could really help them navigate and at least, make introductions to coaches and players, and they don't use you. And that blows my mind. Like, you got a guy that has run camps all over the country. He knows all the college coaches. He's coached in New Jersey. He knows the landscape. He knows the talent. He can evaluate talent. How about you give him a call?
Well,
how about you get a list from him?
Well, it's funny because with all the
that drives me nuts.
And I run a big 7-on-7 club, a big football club, but we have 7-on-7, and we and all the teams we play. So not just my club, but like the teams. Like I had the top player. He's going to Stanford, but 2 years ago I had the top player in New Jersey. He was a two-time Gatorade Player of the Year. He was on our club 2 years ago. So, and it's funny because it took Uconn did offer him, but it took a little while for that to happen. Now
you don't have time like that.
No, now he went to Stanford, and as he was the Gatorade Player of the Year, so which means he was going to end up with a lot of offers.
Yeah, I mean, I get that.
But I think you have to get ahead of some of those guys from that standpoint. And I think that's a key component to it, is that you've got to get ahead of those prospects and get out there, because the early offer, and I think he's trying to do that. What's up, Trey? 20 minutes. I'm on live, man.
No, well, you have to, because
because if you
need a running back, you got to offer 5 to get 1 or 10 to get 1. You got to throw the offers out there, and whoever
I
takes
think you have to throw them out there. I think you have to, I think you have to use. I don't think you could sit in some of these moral high grounds as UConn,
No.
right? So I'm not, you can't break the rules, but I mean, there's very limited rules anyway anymore. But you can, you can't sit in the moral high ground and say, we don't do this and we don't do that. Now, I don't think Mora does that, but I'm just saying UConn, my experience, and I don't know him really very well, but UConn as a university sits now. They don't do this with basketball, okay, but they sit on a moral high ground when it comes to like the other sports, and they're able to be very successful, okay.
Correct.
Because I think UConn is in a sweet spot for most of the other sports in the Northeast, and it showed. Like, we're in like the, what do you call it, what do they call that cup at the end of the year? We're one of the top schools every year as far as
Yeah, we are for the
whatever,
Olympic sports and all the other
all
sports.
Olympic sports, right?
Overall, yes, we are incredible. Overall, if you look at each team, each sport individually, we're one of the best schools in the country athletically, or at least in the Northeast. Field hockey, lacrosse, track,
Right.
baseball this year goes to the Final Four. I mean, hockey's improved. Basketball is what it is. Every sport is having success, and it's football that we want to get back to at least where it was, and they're very capable of doing it. The problem, number one, is a public university.
Mm-hmm.
So there's limitations there, being a public university with the funding. And they renovated everything at the Burton Shankman Center.
Right.
We that's why when I talked to Coach Edsall, I gave him so much credit, because I'm thinking to myself, because I had experience, I coached for 10 years, and I'm thinking, he took the job when he was 40 years old. At 40 years old, within 4 years, he was able to get a stadium built and an indoor facility built. I think that's unheard of. I think that's amazing that he was able to get that done at his age, being as young as he was, at UConn, which doesn't have the deepest alumni pockets.
See, if you go back to before Edsall got there, which was Holtz, right? And even before that, which was Jackson, with that
Jackson.
me. At the end of Jackson's tenure, like, we were getting players. Now, Jackson was I would say, an okay X's and O's guy, average, but a great recruiter for the FCS level, right? And so what I saw there was, the teaser to us was that we were going to go Division I before.
Yeah, that's what I couldn't believe after talking to you. You told me that,
but
and
Holtz, that's how they brought Holtz in under that. I think Randy Edsall was the right person, really able to capitalize on what they really had Holtz kind of leaning towards doing, and then Holtz left and went to South Carolina, which Edsall was the right person to bring in at that time, because he was able to like piggyback instead of like, even though he had his own way of doing things, he was able to piggyback on it, ride into Division I, and do very well. But the guy who really got the ball rolling was a guy, he just passed away, I think, a year or two
Luke
ago.
Perkins.
Lou. And Lou
was the man.
Lou was the man, dude. Was Lou there when you were there?
Yeah, Lou was an OG. I love Lou Perkins.
He was the reason. He was, to me,
nicest guy.
Great guy, great family. He was the catalyst to me to all this stuff happening.
He was.
I think athletic director wise, and I don't know, the new athletic director. I know they brought him in from Auburn, obviously, but I don't know much about him. But but Lou had a presence. Lou wanted to get something done. He got something done. Lou, and I don't know, this place is definitely not there anymore, but Lou used to sit with Calhoun and the president at the Sugar Shack and go and get, I don't know if the Sugar Shack was even there when you were playing anymore, but the Sugar Shack was like a donut shop, and they would sit there and they would be there every, like, on the weekend for, just talking, right? and I think it was Harry. What was Harry's last name? He was the president at the time. But they had a kind of a whole thing going on. They leveraged it to get, UConn basketball to the highest level, to get UConn football into a higher level. And I think when you brought up like they're doing improvements on the Shankman Center.
They did, yeah.
Since Edsall got all that stuff done with Lou, okay, there hasn't been anything done.
No, that was in 05. Yeah, nothing was done since 05 as far as renovations, dressing it up. Absolutely right. 2000, I think 2005 was the first year it opened. And yeah, nothing was done until 2024.
2024. So they started to read, and
That's
if you
when
look
they
at
started renovations.
and if you look at what you're competing with college football landscape wise,
It's an arms race.
Yeah, Oregon built their facility, rebuilt it like 3-4 years later, redid the whole thing.
Yeah.
All these places are doing that every 5 years, basically. And so you're in.
And we were the first, and we were the first in the Northeast to have an indoor facility. It wasn't BC, it wasn't Syracuse, it was us. We were the first, and that forced Syracuse eventually built something. I don't know if BC did or not, but we were the first, and that was Lou saw the value in a good college football program and how it positively affects the university. And it's not just the athletic department. He saw how 1999 when they win the national championship. Look at the admissions numbers. The people who applied to UConn went through the roof. They made a fortune off of it. So he saw that athletics makes money for the college in other ways. And losing him, was huge when he went to Kansas in I think it was 05, because I had Larry Hare on. Larry Hare was the equipment guy. Larry told me the story. Did you know Larry Hare at all?
I don't.
Probably not.
He might be.
He came in 98. 98 was his first year. He was 23 years old, and he was the director of equipment operations. Like, he oversaw everything. But he primarily worked football, basketball. And then, he did well. Lou took the Kansas job, brought Larry with him. And Larry he's been at Kansas 20 years now, and he's an assistant athletic director. He made him an assistant AD. But yeah, and you talk about Lou Perkins, sitting with Calhoun and the president. When I had Carl Bond on, Carl Bond said that Lou would walk onto the practice field and he'd be flanked by two guys in suits, and everyone wondered who the hell they were. And someone told him they're lawyers, they're attorneys, they're advising him, like he was the Don. Like he was the Don. They were giving him advice on what to do. And really, I mean, he maximized UConn and made it into the powerhouse that it has become. If he didn't make certain decisions that he did and certain changes, we'd still be a small regional school in Connecticut.
Right.
There was agriculture and farming or whatever. And Lou did all that. It was Lou, and then I know Randy didn't have the best relationship with his replacement, who was Jeff Hathaway.
Jeff Hathaway, yep.
That was an issue. And then
that was Lou's protege.
It was.
But they were different. Hathaway
completely different.
Lou was a CEO, Hathaway was more like a CFO or COO kind of guy. Maybe more like a COO, an ops guy. And he was a great guy, Jeff Hathaway. I knew him pretty well.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, when I was there. Yeah, I mean, because when I was I played my fifth year season. I was in grad school, and then
Right.
so I was still on scholarship. Then my 6th year there, finishing my MBA program, I worked in the athletic department.
Oh,
I helped
okay.
Kyle Muncie. I was Kyle Muncie's like I was his like
Ah,
game day guy. I helped him in game day.
love
So
Kyle Muncie.
yeah. So Kyle Muncie, he's probably still there, I guess, or did he retire? I don't know.
No, he is.
He's
He is. He listens to the podcast all the time.
Oh, okay, yeah. So Kyle Muncie was great. I mean, so Kyle, so I got to know them a little, you know what I mean, a little bit more, just because I was always hanging around, you know what I mean, like, because I had to do the, help. I was like basically like a glorified intern, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
So
you were the do boy,
I
and
was
you did
paid
everything.
actually, which was great. But
Yeah, you got a stipend.
I was above. Yeah, I was paid. I was paid hourly back then. But it was. I listen. I thought it was $1 million to me.
It was.
So it was great. They're like, yeah, we'll pay you. I was like, oh, great. All right, I'll do it. So, but yeah. But Jeff was much more of an ops guy, and
Okay.
I think it was initially it was the right move, because why would you want to change the system?
You didn't think it would change that much
But it
going
did.
from Hathaway to Lou, going from yeah. But you're right. It did drastically change.
I think it changed in an enthusiasm level. So like an enthusiasm for sports, meaning Lou, I mean, the guy was like what, 6'4", 6'5",
Oh, he was a big man.
huge man. I mean, probably 3 bills plus. When he walked in the room, you knew he was there.
He commanded attention. Absolutely.
I just think, he was, you're in the Northeast, like at that time period, maybe not now, I don't know, but at that time period, though, that mattered, like that presence mattered, right? And I think that was a huge deal that he was able to really get things done because he had a presence. Like he would go and I interned one summer with the governor of Connecticut at the time, Roland, I think was the governor.
Oh, yes. Oh,
All
my
right.
God. I didn't know that.
He had such a great relationship with the governor. Like, was
he had power.
His daughter was interning the same time I was, right? So obviously that was Holtz got me my job there. And he probably asked Lou because his daughter was interning there. So Lou was probably, they're like, all right, this is who you call. You know what I mean? That's how powerful.
So Lou was like the second most powerful person in the state, basically.
Definitely. No doubt about it. Like,
that's
no
awesome.
doubt. There was Governor Roland at the time, and then there was Lou, right? And they probably, I would guess they probably played golf together. You know what I mean? So
yeah, of course.
So it and I think that's what, see, for Connecticut being a small state, Hurley brings that presence, right? Hurley has that presence like that. Okay?
Well, because he's a Jersey guy too, so he knows.
He has that. Yeah, that he fits really well. Like for some reason, that kind of presence fits really well in Connecticut, even though Connecticut is probably like one of the most liberal leftist states in the country. That presence still
also the wealthiest.
Still has a huge effect.
Yes.
And Hurley has a huge effect, and Perkins had a huge effect. And I think, and I don't know much about Benedict, and obviously times have changed, but I think those kind of presences make a big difference in getting things done around the state of Connecticut, right?
Exactly.
Building those relationships. Lou could build those relationships. Okay.
Well,
I think Mora has the personality, from what I've seen, to build those relationships. I don't know whether he is or he isn't, but he seems to have the personality to do that. But I don't know, there's a willingness too. Like Lou had that willingness.
He was very ambitious, I would say.
He was very ambitious. He didn't move fast, but he was like, he got around. You know what I'm saying? Like
he made moves.
He made moves.
Got around.
Like,
yeah.
Yes. And he had
the
people all lined up in place. I mean, listen, our compliance officer, and our compliance officer, I don't know if she was there when you were there, but she's the head of the Northeast Conference. now. She was the compliance officer back when I was at UConn. She's the head of the Northeast Conference.
Oh my God.
Had like
Wow. No, I
FCS
didn't know that.
football, but Division I basketball conference. Yeah, she's the head of it. They had the great Patty Babcock. I don't know if Patty Babcock.
Patty Babcock.
You know what I mean? Like
I used
the
to get my checks from her.
administrators.
Yep.
I mean, she was. Listen, you would go in there because I used to go in there for my Pell Grant money and all that,
Yeah.
shoe money and all that kind of stuff, and which kind of like is like a joke now compared to what it was, what it is now, what they can get. But like, I would go in there, and she was great because she would literally sit and talk with you.
Yes.
And I'd be
Yep.
like, oh, I'm like, does she have somewhere she has to be? Like, she's talking to me about like how's football going and how's this going, how's school going. And and they knew you, right? They knew you. So even though it was the top basketball program, football was on the rise, they knew you there, right? That's what I think has to get back to in UConn football. It has to keep getting bigger, but they have to know you. At the University of Alabama, okay, which is the biggest of the big,
Right.
it's a huge university, but the players have a relationship with the communities around the state, right? They have
Exactly.
they have those relationships, and I think that's a fine balance that UConn has to figure it out. I mean, I don't, I think it's bigger than just the football coach, and
It is. It is. And that was the one thing the Connecticut high school coaches complained about with Randy was he didn't have the best relationship with the Connecticut high school football coaches. He didn't have respect for Connecticut high school football, whereas they were thrilled when Pasqualoni came in because he was a Cheshire guy,
right.
and they thought that he would have a much better relationship with the coaches, recruit more players, bring more in-state kids in. And I mean, Pasqualoni really, he didn't get that long. I mean, I think he got 3 years.
They should have brought in back then. I hate to cut you. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, I'd love to hear it.
I thought they should have brought in back then. Now he's out of vogue and he's older now, so it wouldn't make sense anymore, possibly. But back then,
if you're going to say Don Brown,
no, Don Brown would have been great too when he was younger. I thought, no doubt. But I would say Adazio.
Oh yeah, Steve Adazio was he was in the mix too as well.
Steve Adazio at the time was like right out of Florida.
Yep.
With Tim Tebow and a couple years out of that, and
he went to Temple, I think.
Yes, and he did pretty well there.
Yep.
But he was
and then BC.
He was a bit, but that didn't go as well, right? So
no.
So I thought, and I didn't see it at BC. I saw it at Connecticut because he was at Cheshire. He was the head coach at Cheshire when I played at UConn.
Right.
So
right. He was another Cheshire guy.
We used to get all these players from Cheshire. I'm like, Cheshire, but he was the coach. He'd won 1 million games there, and we would get some great players from there. And I thought, coming back around 20 years now that he seasoned himself as a college coach, he would have been. Now the time has passed. He's kind of gone on the decline, so it wouldn't have. But I thought at the time he might have been a better fit than the direction that they had gone after Edsall left, right? So
right.
But like those kind of things, but it's still bigger to me than just. It's bigger to me than just the head coach, because if if Mora, if he's in the right situation, if it is the right a good situation, probably could be very successful. He's shown he could win. He started to win that first year, but if he gets in a situation where he feels hamstrung, how these football coaches are. They're peeking their eye up from their laptop and thinking, is there a place I can go? Because I can't get
immediately. They're on Football Scoop.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. You're right. They're on Football Scoop and they're looking at the chatter to see what's going on. But I mean, if you take a look at their schedule for this year, I mean, they should at least, I think the ceiling has to be 6 games. I mean, look at who they're playing.
They start with Maryland. That's going to be tough.
Maryland was I can't remember if they were down last year or not, but I don't think they were great last year. They play Merrimack, who's a Division II school, I thought, unless they moved up to FCS.
Yeah.
Duke is good. Duke
Good.
was very good, but then they got Florida Atlantic,
but they're not bad. Florida Atlantic,
FAU, yep, Buffalo. I mean, they should be able to beat Buffalo at home. Temple has been down, right?
Yep.
Wake,
that could be
Wake, up is a coin flip. Rice they beat last year.
Yep.
Georgia State's a new program. UAB is always tough. Syracuse, I still think, is a dumpster fire. And then UMass.
What are you meaning? They don't have enough of a foundation yet, Syracuse?
Oh yeah. I watched.
You're a New York guy, so you got more insight than me.
Yeah, Syracuse is 20 minutes or 30 minutes from where I am. Both my parents went to Syracuse. We had season tickets to Syracuse games. I watched a ton of Syracuse football the last 2 years. They had the good quarterback. Besides him, the backup, I'll never forget his name, was Carlos Del Rio Wilson. And watching him play just baffled me. Like he could not throw the football. He missed on so many passes, and they didn't do anything to really help him. Right. Like if you have a quarterback who struggles with reads or who has happy feet or who you can't protect, you have to make adjustments. And they never did that. If he's getting sacked all the time, keep 6 guys in, keep 7 guys in, and give him a little more time. Run 3-man route combinations, and someone will get open in his zone. I think you got to do that. Move the pocket. He's athletic. Give him a chance to run. Give him a run pass option. They tried to do some of the RPO stuff with him. He didn't read that well. They tried the quick game, 3-step. He just didn't really have the touch on the ball for the 3-step. He would throw rockets at people. And his numbers were just atrocious when Garrett was the quarterback. Garrett, he's a perennial draft pick, and he could have some success. When Garrett played, they did well. And, they did make a bowl game last year, and Baber still got fired. But I still think Syracuse is still, they're behind as well. Teams like Uconn and Syracuse, whenever the NIL stuff began, they did not jump into it. And now they're having to play catch up. And that's what's causing them to struggle. Like Syracuse in the ACC, I can't see them winning more than 5 games. They have a very easy non-conference schedule, but Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Virginia Tech are those games that they're going to win. I don't see it. Yeah. Wake Forest. I mean, Duke. I mean, they're 4-7,
so
4-8, or 5-7.
Do you think that's limiting their recruiting, even with the new coach? Did they give him more money or no?
They did, and he's done a phenomenal job. But as you know, even playing with freshmen, right, it takes time to develop. I don't see it happening this year,
right?
But if they get it together in 2 years, 3 years, they may be a player. Dino Babers.
I think if he wins big, if he wins at all, I think he's going to get a huge job and he'll be gone. That's what a lot of people think.
If he goes and wins
8 games, He's one of the hot coaches in college, and he has a sweet spot location that also where he's from that people will want to get players from. So, and he's been to Georgia. So I think
he can recruit the South. Yep. And he was smart. He was smart to, like you said, he knows Jersey. He was smart to go to Jersey and get some of the top players there. So he's doing it the right way. And, they finally have some NIL money. And now with the NCAA, well, not the NCAA, but the law that was passed that the players get a piece of the television money.
Right.
They're going to have something to throw around. So they may get some players. But, I mean, at worst, if you look at their schedule, I mean, they should beat Merrimack. I think Maryland's a toss-up. I think they should beat Florida Atlantic. I think they should beat Buffalo. Buffalo hasn't been the same since Lance Leipold left.
Right.
Temple, they should beat. Wake Forest, maybe a toss-up. Rice, they beat last year. Georgia State, they beat. I think they beat UAB. Syracuse, probably a toss-up. UMass, I think they beat.
Right.
So if they don't win 5 or 6 games, I would be surprised. I'm the hope would be 6-6, and at least I think they could go 7-5 because they didn't the past 2 years they pigeonholed themselves with the Michigans and the Tennessees and playing Houston and some of the tougher schedules just because they needed the money. And they're, at least this year, they're not doing that. They're understanding talent wise who we can match up with and who we can possibly fill the stands with.
Right.
So, we can rebuild. Because for years, Uconn sold out every game. I mean, I think it was from 03 to 08 or 09. I mean, they sold out every home game. And Rentschler Field is 40,000, but it had the capacity to expand to 60,000. And they were getting to the point where they were going to do that, and they never ended up pulling the trigger, obviously, because of what happened. But
do you think that they should have a stadium on campus?
Everyone talks about that, and the argument I think we talked about was we 195 leading in, and they thought there would be too much traffic. Is there land for stadium? There's land for days to build a stadium there. Do I think that college students are going to get up at 8:00 in the morning on a Saturday, board a bus, go to Rentschler Field and tailgate? No. I don't.
No.
I'm not getting up at 8 a.m.
Still open. Is Husky
not
still
if,
open?
Not if, yeah, not if it's nickel night.
Not if it's nickel night. That's right.
If it's nickel night, it's not happening.
No way.
So, I mean, they gotta. This is where the marketing and the PR and all that comes into play. And like you said, for a school of 20,000 plus to have 2,000 followers on their Twitter page, something's wrong there. They're not posting enough content. As you know, content is king.
It's king.
And that's why you post as much as you do, because that's what brings in the audience. That's what brings in the following. And
you see the numbers. Like, see, here's
there's
the
social
thing.
media.
The thing that the thing that happens in the PR space of this stuff is that the groups that do a better job. I mean, no one's saying you have to do what Dion does, but you right. But you can leverage your social media to post constantly so people see things all the time.
Yep.
And there's little tidbits. I mean, there must be endless highlights from games. Endless. Even when you're losing, there's endless highlights.
Yeah.
Someone should be clipping them up. John Doe clip from last year, boom, up on Instagram. Like, there should be 15 of those a day.
Well, and as you were telling me, it's all based on the algorithm. So if someone starts watching them, it's going to keep showing in their feed. And that's exactly how they'll build and gain more followers. And you're right. I mean, if I'm Uconn football in the state that we're in, I'm posting 5 times a day. I don't care what it is. Get to know so-and-so player. Get to know this Cam Edwards. Get to know certain players.
I'm walking up to
get to know coaches.
I'm walking up to the quarterback and I'm saying, can you do a trick shot? Okay.
Yeah, they had a guy that did that, I remember.
Yeah, you do. You get some trick shots going. You get your kickers doing some trick shots. I mean, this is the off season, right? You get your listen, you know who has the best? I'll tell you who's the best PR for UConn. It was 2 people that are best PR for UConn. One is not trying. The other one is. The one who's not trying is Hurley. Okay. He's
right.
Every time they post something on him, it does well. But he's not trying. He's just being him. Okay.
Yes.
Paige Buchers.
Paige is great. Yes.
How do you say it? Is it Beckers or how do you say it? Beckers? Paige
Beckers. Yeah.
Paige Beckers. Her TikTok.
Is huge.
It's unbelievable. And
they had a track girl too with amazing numbers.
And then the girl who was a point guard, Nika Mule, right? Who's very pretty, not just good, very pretty. Like, but they didn't leverage Nika at all. Nika was doing it herself. Paige Becker was doing it herself.
It blows my mind that there isn't a social media department or a social media team in the athletic department, because social media now is crucial in almost every aspect of life. Like, if you run a business, you need social media. I mean, whatever you're doing, if you're trying to get recruited, you need social media. If you want to make friends, you need social media.
Right.
I mean, we live and die by social media. Now, it drives me nuts that, people post 15 times a day sometimes, but in reality, like, if you want breaking news, where's breaking news usually? Twitter.
Right.
If there's any breaking news, it comes on Twitter.
Correct.
That's the first place you'll find it. So for them not to take advantage of that is a mistake. And, looking at what they have, being in the Northeast, weather is a factor. Those October, November games, they're going to be windy. They're going to be cold. You're not going to be able to run some spread offense and throw the ball 30, 35 times a game. You're going to have to run the ball. And, they at least have some running backs who have talent.
They do have running backs.
Who they need to feed.
Just feed them. Run in Northeast. You're 100% right on that.
Just feed them. And that's the one thing Randy figured out. Randy figured that out. I think around like 2006, Randy said, we're running power, we're running counter, we're running play action, and we're running screens. And that's our offense. I'm not doing any of this other bullshit. We're not running a ton of zone. We're not running a ton of outside stuff. We're going to run power. We're going to run counter, and we're going to get big chunks off of play action. And that's because he recognized that we have grass. Teams aren't used to playing on grass. We have a plethora of running backs. I mean, they had, when I was there, we had Terry Cully. They had Donald Brown followed him. Yep. They had the other guy, I can't remember his name, number 26. He played in the NFL. He was really good.
Yeah, I remember.
they were running back you. It was, they had Lou Allen. Lou Allen was a big, physical, tough back. And that's how they survived. Randy was always big on running the ball, not turning it over. He was like Bill Parcells, running the ball, not turning it over, playing field position, controlling the time of possession, and playing great defense. That was his core values as a coach, and that's what he believed in, and that's what won him games. And I think taking advantage of what you have at Rentschler Field, you're going to slow teams down because they're going to be on grass. You're going to have the weather advantage, and you're practicing in that weather every day, so how to have success with it. And in order to have a good running game, you need the horses,
right,
the running backs, but you also need the offensive linemen. So you got to develop those offensive linemen so they can be physical run blockers. You know that you're not going to get those athletic pass blockers, but you can get tough road graders to create lanes to run the ball. When it's 3rd and 7, Randy would hand it off. That's just what he believed in. He would rather hand it off than take a chance throwing it, and getting a sack or an interception and, losing field position. He always believed in field position, time of possession, and in defense. And, his special teams were impeccable. He had a guy by the name of, I think his name was Larry Taylor, who was a great returner. He returned several punts for touchdowns. I think he returned kickoffs for touchdowns. I believe he's in the record books for averaging the average yards per return. But that's the formula.
Yep.
And I think that's what they honestly have to stick with to get back to where we hope they can be, because there's no reason with the schedule they have, the talent that they've brought in, and the experience level that they shouldn't win 6 games and go to a bowl. They should, if a couple games go the right way, win 8 games, 7 games. There's no reason. There's nobody on that schedule where I look at and say, oh my God, they're going to get killed. Oh my God, they're going to get destroyed. They have no chance. If you look at their schedule, there's nobody listed that you would honestly say they have no chance against.
Well, and the key thing is, so they look like they have 2 pretty good running backs in Rosa and Edwards for this year. The key is the quarterback position, because if it's zero consistency at quarterback for a very, very long time, and maybe not since Lorenzen, maybe,
Frazier was the guy they had.
Oh, who was great, but he was on a terrible team? Pindle was great.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, 100%.
Great, but he was 100%. On a terrible team.
Didn't have much around him at all. Absolutely.
He was actually great. It was a shame, because Pindle could have been. I think Pindle in the right situation really could have been like.
Yeah, and Zach Frazier was the transfer from Notre Dame that led them to the Fiesta Bowl.
Yep.
Tyler Lorenzen, he didn't have spectacular numbers, but he won you 8 games.
Yeah.
And that's what you're going to get.
They've got to get a guy, I think they need to get what they need to get quarterback wise. And they tried to do this with Roberson, but didn't turn out that way for them. Is they need to get a guy who can do running and passing, so they can run. They can run the spread stuff if they needs to, and they can run the power stuff if they need to. But he can't be a bad passer. That's the thing. He's got to be a guy that could throw in weather. Okay.
with the
And
wind. Yes,
yeah, yes, he's got to be able to throw in weather, and he's got to be able to do some things with his legs. But he's got to be able to handle kind of a mixed offense, which is where you got some pro style stuff going on, but
exactly.
still have the ability to run the spread stuff and move and take off and run. And I don't know if it's hard for them to get that guy or they're not able to. I'm pretty sure they thought when Roberson transferred they had that, but I think that you have to find that right guy because that is the key. Maybe Evers is this guy if they're coming in to have that competition going on quarterback. Hopefully that's the case, but I think that's really the key because um in today's game, you do have to move a little bit. The quarterback's got to move a little bit, I think.
You can't be a statue.
In college, unless he really is that level of a passer, which is he's probably not coming to UConn, is my point on that. If he's that level of passer, he's probably not coming to UConn. But you need to get a guy that, a guy that threw for 2K and ran for 600 in high school. You know what I mean? That has the measurables that you need, that can take off and run, that's dynamic, but also, if he's missing something, it's that he is almost like a decathlete. He's very good at everything, but this is what UConn has to get. He's very good at everything, master at none, and then figure out if you can make him close to a master as a passer. And because he's very good at everything, he could also run. He's athletic. But he doesn't have to be a straight runner, because I think that hurts us. I think
can't risk the injury.
Exactly, because to replace that guy, you need to have. I think it's easier to get those guys down south where you can get a backup because you need to have the backup, right? So whatever your offense is, you need to have a backup that can do that offense too.
That's exactly what. Remember, Frank said that. Frank said he wants 3 quarterbacks. They can all do the same thing, so you don't have to pay one guy $40 million.
Right. Right.
3 quarterbacks, so you can run the same offense.
And there's something to it. And I think you could find that kind of like master of none, jack of all trades type of quarterback in the Northeast, or if you have to go somewhere else. But I think you can get it. And I think that's maybe these guys are, I don't know because they haven't really played a ton yet, for us. And we'll find out. But I think that's a big key. I agree on the line. I mean, UConn, that's the one thing UConn's been able to get when guys have recruited well. They've been able to get linemen. They've done a great job of getting a mix of the scholarship guys and then some of these walk-ons that develop. Connecticut has some of those walk-ons that can develop, like
he does.
The Darbys of the world, right? Like those guys that were tight ends in high school, right? That were 6'4", 235 pounds. But you're like, this guy's frame can get to 280, 290, 300. And I think, I think the Northeast produces a lot of those guys. The hardest thing always on is saying, hey, listen, you're coming in here as a tight end, but we may move you, and will you stay? And that's the hardest thing about today's world because kids are not as astute to that. They'll transfer out. But
they will.
If you could find some of those guys, a guy that's just, he's a tight end. He knows he's a little bit bigger, and they kind of use him at tight end still. But and we got to get some of those guys, and we got to get. I think we had to do a better job of next generation players, meaning guys that went to UConn who played there, and that have had kids. Like Dave Frank's kid went to some Big Ten school, right?
Wow, really?
Slow, yeah. It was an offensive lineman. He was an offensive lineman. His son's, I think, a star. Maybe I want to say Purdue. He went somewhere big time. He played with me. He was at Maryland. He's now at Alabama. He was a quarterback in high school. Who's the tight end for Alabama now? He played at UConn. Dupree. Dupree was a linebacker at UConn when I was there. He was a transfer from JUCO. Father wanted him to get an offer from UConn right away. They were a little bit slow in the process. He ended up going to Maryland. Now transferred. Now he's starter at Alabama.
That's ridiculous.
He was a quarterback in high school that was 6'5", but you knew he wasn't gonna probably be a quarterback, right? I mean, he's a great athlete, and he went to Maryland, and then did pretty well. Transferred to Alabama, starter at Alabama.
That's why you can't be slow in the process. And we had these same arguments and discussions at Holy Cross because, if we needed one quarterback, we tried to explain to coach, we have one scholarship for a quarterback. To get one quarterback, you have to offer 5 to 10.
Right.
And you have to be happy with any of them saying yes. And that was his thing. What if we offer this kid and he says yes? I said, if he says yes, then I'm going to do cartwheels down College Street. Like, that's great. And he was always worried about, well, if he says yes, and then 2 months later, the guy we had ranked ahead of him says yes, we just lost the better player. And he just never saw it. He didn't understand it that way. You cannot come in last. You got to be first. It shows your commitment.
I think if you communicate well as a head coach, or your assistant that's handling communicates well in the process, if you have those 5 to 10 guys and someone's rated number 1, right, and 5 says he wants to come, you can go and talk to one and say, hey, listen, this guy wants to come. I'm not trying to squeeze you. You don't have to take it. I'm just saying, if he's going to take it, there won't be a spot here. You may have better options. That's fine. But I want to let you know, give you the option to do it. You may be surprised. A kid may say, I want to go here, right? But I think if you're late in the process, you end up with number 10.
That's the worst. Yes.
You end up with the 10th guy. You're late in the process. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 feels like they haven't been loved up enough. And then you end up with 10. And then you're like, oh, my goodness. Like, yeah. I ended up with number 10. Okay. And I don't know. It just, I'm not saying it's easy. You coached it. You know how it is.
No, I hated it. Believe me, that's the one thing that turned me off from college football was recruiting, because I felt it was so dishonest, because everyone lied. The players lied. The coaches lied. The parents lied. You'd have a kid who had been committed for months, and then in October would decommit and go somewhere else. You'd have the same situation with us. We'd have a kid who was committed for months, and then, he was ranked 5th on our board. Number 2 became available. We're pulling your scholarship offer, and we're offering number 2. I saw it happen both ways, and I just thought, like, this isn't right. And then now, with the rule changes where communication is constant and there's really no dead period, like, you can work with, in college, you can work with these players all through July. So they're doing their strength and conditioning stuff, and then the coaches take them on the field for an hour of position work, and then they watch film. So as a coach, you don't get the month off of July anymore. We used to share office duty where, you do a half week and someone else would do a half week. But for the most part, you had 3 to 4 full weeks off in July. They don't have that anymore because the NCAA said you can work out with players. The phone call situation, it was, 1 call a week. And then now, they've gone to unlimited communication. You can text message now, right. Tweet now, and the communication never stops. I remember my last couple of years there getting phone calls at 11 o'clock at night, or texts at 11 o'clock at night, midnight. And if you don't respond right away, they're like, what's going on? You don't like me anymore? Why aren't you talking to me? I'm like, and I would get pissy, and I would just be honest. I'd be like, listen, we like you. We've offered you. You have a scholarship offer here. We want you. What we think of you. We don't need to talk all the time. I'll talk to you once a week, No problem with that. But this everyday communication, like we're best friends, like you need a buddy to talk to. That's not what this is. This is college football. We're preparing for a game. I don't have time to sit around tweeting and texting you.
And that's why the staffs have grown, because that's what they're doing. They're getting people to make believe I'm Steve Cully. I'm an intern. I'm Steve Cully interacting with you all the time.
Yes, you're right.
I'm calling plays. And
you're right.
Steve Cully just texted me in between his play call.
You're right. That's exactly right. That's what the analysts or the recruiting staff, that's what they're doing. They have to monitor all that because the communication never stops.
Yep.
And that's where I think, and
I think
Frank,
they need more people. I think what they should be doing, because they do have some intern, I think the NCAA should allow many more GAs, okay, into the process that can be allowed to work in the early stages of the career. You can keep it capped, the age thing or whatever, because I know Nick Saban was making 75-year-old GAs with like ex-head coaches, which was
well, and then they went to the analysts, which I thought was hilarious.
Now the analysts could be on the field.
Now the analysts can be on the
field. So now you need more people to because if the analyst is coaching, he can't be tweeting, texting. So now but they really, we get it. Like so everybody needs a response, and it's true, because in regular business, okay, if someone asks for a refund, they expect a response very timely, right?
Promptly, yes.
Promptly. So you're stuck in this mode where everybody is expecting an Amazon thing. I order my stuff today and it'll be here in 8 hours, right? So I text you. I'm your number one recruit, and I text you. I say hi, okay? Which kids will do, because kids, like, when they get bored,
that's what they do.
I'll go say hi to coach, say what's up. I'm with my friends. Yo, coach will respond to me right away. Coach doesn't respond. Yo, he don't like you. He don't like you that much. Yeah. You're full of shit. You know what I mean?
That's what it turns into.
That's what it turns into. The boys standing around with them, and they're like, yo, when was the last time you talked to Oklahoma?
Maybe they found someone else. Maybe they're pulling your offer.
I'm texting coach right now. Hey, coach, what's up? And coach didn't respond to you.
Oh, yeah. That's 100% what it is.
Like the kids. So it's becoming this constant thing. It's the Amazon effect. It's the constant, like, think about when you text. I'm going to go and bring this into like dating, right? Because you're still in the dating world, right? So I'm going to bring it into the dating world, right?
Yeah.
In the old days, like before I got with my wife, like if I texted someone after going out with them, or, and they didn't respond right away, I really didn't think too much about it. Like, I would be like, oh, I played the 1 day rule. Like, I waited. Now, if you don't respond to somebody, you don't like
it's the end of the world.
It's the end of the world. I'm going up on Bumble or whatever the heck they go up on.
Yeah.
Now, and I'm swiping right, like, what, like, and so it's funny, because that part is that's infiltrated everything.
Yes, you're right.
So
it's that instant gratification.
It's instant gratification. Like, I commented on your post. Why didn't you respond to me? Type of thing.
Yeah.
And that's a big part. But I don't know. We could go on for hours on the show. I think it's been a great. You
know what? There aren't many better starts than this, so I have to give it credit. An amazing start to the Husky Huddle. I am proud to be a part of it, and I am going to message Phil Hunt and thank him for inviting us to the golf tournament. Phil, Phil, why did I get this? Tommy showing me about the golf tournament. Dave and I didn't get invited. Where were our invitations?
Tommy Collins.
I'm gonna message. I'm gonna message Tommy, and then I'm gonna message Phil because Phil's just he's there now, and he's in the president's office, and I'm gonna say, Phil, like, what, we don't count. Dave and I don't count. We're alums.
They probably figure Dave won't come anyway. That's what they figure.
How do you know I don't have $10 million? Maybe I have $10 million somewhere. Maybe it's in my backyard, and you're not going to get it. You don't know because you didn't invite me to the golf tournament. You could be getting 10 million right now. You could be building another, in addition to the Shankman Center with my 10 million, but you're not getting it because you didn't invite us.
They don't want your Dodge coin. They want your.
No, they don't.
They don't want your Dodge coin. They want real stuff. So, but yeah, let's wrap this show up and
we're gonna get Baylock on.
Because I like your clothes.
Listen, nobody closes better than me. Just so you know, this has been the Husky Huddle with the coach himself, Dave Schuman, and the best podcast host in the universe, Steve Cully, telling you, remember, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take 2 oranges, throw them right back at life.